Imagine standing in the United Nations Hall, a place where most leaders speak carefully, hiding behind diplomatic words. Now picture one president walking up to the microphone, and instead of playing safe, he drops truth bombs that leave the room in stunned silence. That's exactly what happened when the president of South Africa took the stage and delivered one of the most fearless speeches the UN has heard in decades. He didn't hold back. He called out injustice, he named names, and yes, he humiliated Israel on the world stage. Stick around, because this speech was not just politics. It was a thunderstorm that shook the global order.
Breaking news. A live broadcast has shaken the world stage as the president of South Africa stood at the United Nations and delivered a speech that sent shockwaves across the globe. His words were bold, direct, and unapologetic, holding nothing back as he confronted the most controversial issues of our time. He didn't whisper, he roared. He called out injustice, hypocrisy, and power games in the international system with a courage that electrified the room. And the world listened. He began by reminding everyone of how trade, once meant to connect nations and improve lives, has instead been weaponized. He painted a picture of a global system where money is spent on building weapons instead of schools, on financing wars instead of hospitals, on destroying lives instead of improving them. His voice cut through the air with frustration and urgency. Why are we pouring trillions into tools of destruction when billions of people still live in poverty? Why are we so obsessed with war while turning our backs on peace? It was a call not just to think, but to act. The president then shifted his focus to the crumbling state of international law. He condemned the rising trend of unilateral military actions, wars launched without international approval, interventions justified with excuses but lacking legitimacy. He accused powerful nations of deliberately undermining the very institutions created to safeguard peace. The UN Security Council, in his words, has failed. It no longer reflects fairness or efficiency, unable to enforce accountability, or even respect its own mandate. South Africa, he said, is deeply troubled by this collapse of credibility, by the way the Council has stood by while crises in Congo, Sudan, Gaza, and elsewhere have spiraled into humanitarian nightmares. And then came the part that froze the hall into silence. He directly accused Israel of committing genocide in Gaza. With an unwavering tone, he reminded the assembly that just last week, an independent UN Commission of Inquiry concluded that Israel bears responsibility for genocide. These were not empty accusations, they were findings from the international community itself. He made it clear, South Africa cannot and will not look away while Palestinians face annihilation. He declared that his country went to the International Court of Justice not out of politics, but out of humanity, demanding the world recognize and stop the genocide unfolding before our eyes. The applause was thunderous, but the silence of some was even louder. With that momentum, he celebrated a historic shift happening around the globe. 142 nations now back the two-state solution, recognizing that Palestinians deserve a state of their own alongside a peaceful Israel. He stressed that Israel must listen to this overwhelming global voice, and he urged the nations with the power to make this vision a reality to act now, not later. He pointed to the growing number of countries officially recognizing the state of Palestine as proof that history is moving forward, whether Israel likes it or not. He didn't stop there. His message was not just for Palestine, but for every nation whose right to self-determination has been trampled. He highlighted Western Sahara, reminding the assembly that its people are still denied independence decades after the UN first promised it. His words were sharp. No country should be left behind, no people denied their dignity. Then came a chilling reminder of humanity's most destructive invention. He recalled how, in January 1946, the very first UN General Assembly resolution demanded the elimination of nuclear weapons. That resolution was passed after the catastrophic bombings of Hiroshima and Nagasaki, which killed hundreds of thousands and scarred generations. Decades later, he said, we have still failed to achieve meaningful progress. Nuclear weapons remain stockpiled, ready to wipe out life on Earth, while promises of disarmament fade into empty speeches. And yet hope is not dead. In 2026, South Africa will chair the first review conference on the Treaty on the Prohibition of Nuclear Weapons. He described this treaty as the ultimate safeguard against annihilation. The only true guarantee of peace is a world without nuclear arms. He welcomed the voices of leaders who spoke against nuclear weapons, calling on others to join them before it is too late.
The president then turned to another pressing issue, the rights of women and girls worldwide. With passion in his voice, he reminded the assembly that this year marks the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and its action platform, which has served as a roadmap for gender equality. Yet, 3 decades later, progress has been painfully slow. He demanded that women not only be empowered, but fully included, equally and meaningfully, in every part of society, from politics to business to global decision-making. He even voiced strong support for electing the first woman Secretary General of the United Nations, arguing that such a milestone is long overdue. His words rang with conviction. Women are not second-class citizens, they are equals, and the world can no longer justify holding them back. Linking this to the bigger picture, he declared that the right to development must be placed at the center of UN policy. He explained that true development cannot just be about economics. It must be about dignity, equality, and justice. He urged the UN, its programs, and its financial systems to put people first, not profits, to design strategies that lift up the vulnerable instead of enriching the powerful. Development, he said, is a human right, not a luxury. He then circled back to the broader mission of the UN, reminding everyone that this year marks its 80th anniversary. But instead of just celebrating, he challenged the assembly to ask a harder question. Has the UN truly lived up to its promise? His answer was blunt. The UN can do more, and it must do more. He called for an organization that is stronger, more capable, and rooted once again in its founding principles of peace, justice, and equality. From there, he pushed into one of the toughest subjects of all, UN reform. With clear frustration, he highlighted the need to reform the Security Council itself. He said it must be accountable, democratic, and truly representative of the world it claims to serve. He called out the glaring injustice. Entire continents like Africa and South America, home to nearly 2 billion people, remain excluded from permanent representation in the Security Council. How can the UN claim to represent humanity when most of humanity has no seat at the table? He did not mince words. This imbalance is unfair, unacceptable, and must end. He urged member states to accelerate negotiations on Security Council reform and move beyond endless debates. He demanded real progress, not just promises. His vision was clear, a Security Council that reflects today's world, not the power structures of 1945. One that listens to the voices of the global South, not just the privileged few. Then came a message of collaboration. He expressed South Africa's eagerness to work closely with the UN's Secretary General on the UN 80 initiative, a roadmap to make the organization more effective and efficient. He stressed that mandates given by member states must be carried out faithfully and that structural reforms and program adjustments are urgently needed across the system. In a time of shrinking funding, he warned the UN must adapt or risk losing its credibility. The UN 80 initiative, he said, could help preserve the integrity of the multilateral system and uphold the rule of international law. As he neared the end of his speech, his tone shifted from sharp criticism to powerful inspiration. He reminded the assembly that membership in the UN is not just about politics, it's about shared humanity. For 80 years, the UN has been a forum for countries to debate, disagree, and sometimes unite. But now it must rise to new heights. He challenged the global community to aim higher, to fight harder, and to do more to guarantee political, economic, and social freedom for all people.
His closing words were heavy with meaning. Freedom is indivisible. If one person is denied their rights, all of humanity is diminished. If one country is left behind, the whole world suffers. He demanded that we recognize the equal dignity and value of every human being and commit to leaving no one and no nation behind. And with that, he ended, leaving the hall in stunned silence, followed by a wave of applause that echoed far beyond the walls of the United Nations. This was not just another speech, it was a wake-up call, a challenge to the powerful, a lifeline to the oppressed. A bold reminder that the world cannot afford to look away while injustice spreads like wildfire. The president of South Africa had stood before the world and spoken truth to power. And whether his words are embraced or ignored, one thing is certain. History will remember this moment as the day the world was forced to confront itself in the mirror.
And there you have it, the speech that silenced world leaders and sent shockwaves across the globe. Whether you agree with every word or not, one thing is undeniable: the courage it takes to stand at the United Nations and speak raw, unfiltered truth. This wasn't just another diplomatic address. It was a moment that history will remember. So here's the question. Do you think the world will actually listen, or will these words fade into the endless noise of global politics? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll be reading them all. If you found this breakdown powerful, hit that like button, subscribe for more bold global stories, and don't forget to share this with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay sharp, stay informed, and never stop questioning the world around you.